The mashed potatoes were getting cold, but nobody cared. Mark was holding court again at Mom's dining table, his voice booming across the Christmas dinner like he owned the room. "You know what's funny?" he said, pointing his fork at me. "Jamie spent 4 years and $40,000 to learn how to use a calculator." The whole table erupted in laughter. Dad nearly choked on his wine. My sister Angela covered her mouth, trying not to spit out her food. Even Mom smiled, that tight little smile she got when she didn't want to pick sides. I sat there, cutting my ham into perfect squares, saying nothing. Just like always. Mark leaned back in his chair, that smug grin spreading across his face. While my boring brother was memorizing formulas, I was making 6 figures selling houses before I turned 25. The real world beats textbooks every time. My phone buzzed under the table. A text from my business partner. "New project approved. Need a senior consultant to hire ASAP. Can you join the final interview panel next week?" I looked up at Mark, still basking in his audience's approval. Something shifted inside me. Not anger. Something quieter. Something patient. After dinner, I helped Mom clear the dishes while Mark regaled everyone with stories about his latest real estate deals. The same stories he'd told for 3 years running. I dried each plate carefully, methodically, the way I approached everything in life. "You know he doesn't mean anything by it," Mom said quietly, scraping leftover gravy into a container. "He's just proud of his success." I nodded, but we both knew that wasn't true. Mark had been taking shots at my engineering degree since graduation day. Every family gathering, every holiday, every birthday party. The quiet brother with the useless education. The pencil pusher who would never amount to anything. The boring one who hid behind books while Mark conquered the world. I folded the dish towel and hung it neatly on the rack. "I know, Mom." But as I drove home that night, Christmas lights blinking in my rearview mirror, I kept thinking about that text. Our consulting firm was expanding into real estate technology. We needed someone with sales experience. Someone who understood the market. Someone who could bridge the gap between our technical solutions and actual clients. The irony wasn't lost on me. The resume arrived on Tuesday morning. I was reviewing the shortlisted candidates when I saw the name, Mark C. Whitman. My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. My younger brother had applied for a senior consultant position at Watson & Associates, the same firm where I'd been a partner for 8 years. The same company he'd never bothered to ask about because he assumed I was just another employee buried in some cubicle somewhere. I scrolled through his application, my trained eye catching the inflated numbers immediately. Revenue claims that seemed too round, too perfect. Territory descriptions that didn't match the timeline. A portfolio of achievements that read more like wishful thinking than documented success. I printed out his resume and read it again. Mark had always been good at selling himself. But this wasn't a family dinner where charm could cover for substance. This was my world. My rules. My standards. I picked up my phone and dialed our HR director. "Patricia, I need to disclose something about one of the candidates. Mark Whitman is my brother." There was a pause. "Is that going to be a problem?" "No," I said, staring at the resume. "I don't think it will be." Patricia cleared it with the board. Since it was a panel interview with 3 other senior partners, and since all decisions were made by majority vote, my relationship to the candidate wouldn't compromise the process. As long as I disclosed it up front and remained professional, I could participate. I signed the disclosure form with steady hands. No trembling. No second thoughts. Just my name in neat block letters at the bottom of the page. I'd spent 30 years being the responsible one. The one who followed rules. The one who did things the right way, even when it cost me. Even when it made me the target of Mark's jokes. But being methodical had its advantages. When you build something brick by brick, year by year, it becomes solid, permanent, unshakable. I walked to the conference room where we'd conduct the interview. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Polished mahogany table. Leather chairs. The kind of office Mark had always bragged about working in but never actually reached. I straightened my tie and checked my watch. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, my little brother would sit across from me, not knowing that the boring guy with the useless degree was about to decide his future. The morning of the interview, I arrived early and arranged the conference room exactly how I wanted it. Water glasses filled. Notepads aligned. Chairs were positioned so the candidate would sit directly across from me. I reviewed his resume one final time, cross-referencing his claims against public records I'd quietly pulled. The discrepancies were worse than I'd initially thought. His biggest sale had been to a company that went bankrupt 6 months later. His territory expansion had actually been a lateral move after his previous branch closed. His award-winning performance came from a regional contest with only 3 participants. I wasn't angry. Anger was messy, unpredictable. This was something else. This was precision. The other panelists arrived at 1:45. Helen from operations, Marcus from finance, and Janet from business development. I briefed them on the candidate's background without mentioning our relationship. They flipped through his portfolio with the same skeptical expressions I'd worn. These numbers seem ambitious, Helen noted. We'll need to verify his claims, Marcus added. Janet just shook her head. He's either a superstar or a con artist. Let's find out which. At exactly 2 o'clock, the receptionist knocked. Mr. Whitman is here. Mark walked into the conference room with that same confident swagger he'd used at every family gathering. Designer suit. Expensive watch. Smile that could sell ice to penguins. He shook hands with each panelist, working the room like he owned it. Then he turned to me. The smile faltered for just a second. His eyes widened slightly, but he recovered quickly, extending his hand like we were strangers. Tom Whitman, he said, using my full name instead of Jamie, keeping his voice level. Professional. I shook his hand firmly. Mr. Whitman, please have a seat. He sat down slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to process this reversal, trying to figure out how the boring brother with the useless degree had ended up on the other side of the table. Helen started with the standard questions. Background. Experience. Career goals. Mark gave polished answers, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his hands when he reached for his water glass. He kept glancing at me, waiting for some sign, some indication of what I might do. I said nothing, just took notes, watched, waited. The real questions were coming. Let's talk about your sales record, Marcus said, pulling out a copy of Mark's resume. You claim to have generated $5 million in revenue over the past 3 years. Can you walk us through those numbers? Mark straightened in his chair. This was his element, his comfort zone. He launched into a detailed explanation of his biggest deals, his voice growing more confident with each success story. Market analysis, client relationships, negotiation strategies. He was good. I had to admit that. He'd always been good at talking. But talking wasn't enough. Not here. Not anymore. Those are impressive figures, Janet said. Do you have documentation to support these claims? Mark's smile tightened slightly. Of course. I brought a portfolio of my major transactions. He slid a leather folder across the table. Helen opened it and began flipping through the pages. I already knew what she'd find. Property listings without closing dates. Client testimonials that were too generic to be real. Revenue projections disguised as actual sales. This is interesting, Helen said carefully. But I'm not seeing closed deal confirmations for some of these larger transactions. Mark's jaw tightened. Some of that information is confidential. Client privacy, you understand. I leaned forward slightly. Of course, we respect confidentiality. But surely you can provide verification for the $5 million figure you mentioned. The room went quiet. Mark's eyes darted between the panelists, looking for an escape route. But there wasn't one. This wasn't a family dinner where he could deflect with humor or charm his way out of tough questions. This was a boardroom where every claim had to be backed up with facts. Well, he said slowly, that number includes projected revenue from ongoing deals, future earnings from established relationships. Marcus looked up from his notes. So these are estimates, not actual sales. They're commitments, Mark insisted. Verbal agreements. Handshake deals. In my business, relationships matter more than paperwork. I opened my laptop and pulled up a document I prepared. Actually, I took the liberty of researching some of your recent transactions. According to public records, your previous firm closed that branch office in September due to underperformance. Mark's face flushed. That's not. The property management company you claim generated $2 million in revenue filed for bankruptcy 6 months after your supposed deal. His hands clenched into fists. You don't understand the market. The regional sales award you mentioned? I spoke with the organizing committee. There were only 3 participants that year. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Mark stared at me with something between shock and fury. The golden boy who'd never been challenged. The charmer who'd never been called out. The little brother who'd just discovered that his boring older sibling had been paying attention all along. I think we need a short break, Helen said diplomatically. The panelists filed out, leaving Mark and me alone in the conference room. He waited until the door clicked shut, then exploded. What the hell is this, Jamie? The professional facade cracked completely. You're going to torpedo my interview because you're jealous? I stayed seated, my hands folded calmly on the table. I'm not doing anything, Mark. I'm just asking standard questions. Standard questions? He laughed bitterly. You dug up dirt on me. You prepared a hit piece. This is personal. No, I said quietly. This is business. You applied for a position at my firm. I'm evaluating your qualifications. Your firm? His voice rose. You're a junior partner at best. Some middle management nobody. I let that hang in the air for a moment. I'm a founding partner, Mark. I've been here since the beginning. The color drained from his face. That's impossible. You're an engineer. You work for other people. I am an engineer. And I built this company from the ground up. While you were making jokes about my degree, I was using it to create something real. He slumped back in his chair. So you're going to block me from this job. That's your revenge. I stood up and walked to the window. I'm not blocking you from anything. I'm just letting your qualifications speak for themselves. The panelists were returning. Mark straightened his tie and forced the smile back onto his face. But something had shifted. The confidence was gone. The swagger had evaporated. For the first time in 30 years, my little brother looked uncertain. The second half of the interview was painful to watch. Mark stumbled through technical questions he should have known. His sales strategy was generic. His market analysis was superficial. The panelists were polite but skeptical. When it was over, he shook hands with everyone and left quickly. The moment the door closed, the evaluation began. Well, Helen said, that was illuminating. The documentation issues are concerning, Marcus added. Half his portfolio appears to be fabricated. Janet was more direct. He's a fraud. Charismatic, but a fraud. I said nothing. Just listened as they dissected his performance. The inflated claims. The defensive answers. The obvious lack of technical knowledge. 20 minutes later, they reached their conclusion. We'll need to check references, Helen said. But I think we can all agree this isn't our candidate. I nodded. I'll recuse myself from the final decision to avoid any conflict of interest. Appreciated, Marcus said. But honestly, Tom, the conflict is academic. He's not qualified. I stayed after the others left, staring out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Mark was probably calling his wife, telling her the interview went great, spinning the story to make himself the hero, the same way he'd spun every story for the past 30 years. But this time, the truth would catch up to him. This time, there would be consequences. Mark waited 3 days before calling. I was in my office, reviewing quarterly reports, when his name popped up on my phone. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello, Mark. Jamie. His voice was tight, controlled. I wanted to thank you for the interview opportunity. You're welcome. Have you heard anything back from the panel? I leaned back in my chair. These things take time. We're checking references, verifying credentials. Right? Of course. A pause. Look, I know we don't always see eye to eye, but I hope you put in a good word for me. I told you, Mark. I recused myself from the decision. But you could still influence. No, I couldn't. And I wouldn't. Another pause. Longer this time. So that's it. You're just going to hang me out to dry? I'm not hanging you out to dry. I'm following proper procedures. Procedures, he spat. You always hide behind procedures. Behind rules. Behind your precious degrees and certifications. I said nothing. Let him dig his own grave. You know what? I don't need this job. I've got 3 other offers pending. Better offers. This was just a courtesy interview. I'm sure you'll do well wherever you end up. Damn right I will. The line went dead. I set the phone down and went back to my reports. But my concentration was broken. I kept thinking about Christmases past, about family dinners, about years of small humiliations that had built up like sediment in my chest. The revenge wasn't supposed to feel this hollow. The formal rejection letter went out on Friday. Standard language. Professional tone. Thank you for your interest in our firm. After careful consideration, we have decided to pursue other candidates. I didn't write it. I didn't sign it. I didn't even see it until it was sent. But I knew it was coming. Mark called that night. Not me. Mom. I was having dinner when my phone rang. Jamie, what did you do? Her voice was strained. Disappointed. I don't know what you mean. Mark is devastated. He said you sabotaged his interview. I participated in a professional evaluation. Nothing more. He said you ambushed him, embarrassed him in front of other people. I set down my fork. He lied on his resume, Mom. He made up sales figures. He fabricated awards. That's not. I have documentation, public records, financial statements. Everything he claimed was false. Silence. Then, maybe he exaggerated a little. Everyone does that on resumes. A little. I laughed bitterly. He claimed $5 million in revenue. His actual sales were less than $500,000. You don't understand his industry. I understand lying. And I understand the consequences. He's family, Jamie. He's your brother. I know. That's why it hurts. The line went quiet. When Mom spoke again, her voice was softer. What do you want me to tell him? Tell him the truth. For once in his life, tell him the truth. Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away. I considered skipping it, avoiding the inevitable confrontation. But that would be running away. And I'd done enough running. I called Mom on Tuesday. I'll be there for dinner. And I'm bringing someone. Who? A colleague. Alex Chun. My business partner. Jamie, I don't think that's a good idea. Mark is still upset about the interview. I'm sure he is. But Alex is important to me. I want you to meet him. This isn't the time for, Mom. Either I bring Alex or I don't come at all. Your choice. A long pause. Fine. But please, try to keep things civil. I always do. Thursday arrived gray and cold. I picked up Alex at his apartment. He was nervous about meeting my family. I'd warned him about Mark, but I hadn't told him everything. Are you sure about this? He asked as we drove to Mom's house. It feels like walking into a war zone. Not a war, I said. A reckoning. The cars in the driveway told the story. Dad's sedan, Angela's SUV, Mark's BMW. The whole family was there. All the players assembled for the final act. I straightened my tie and walked to the front door. It was time to end this. Once and for all. The tension was immediate. Mark stood in the living room, beer in hand, surrounded by the usual audience. He saw me first, then Alex. His expression shifted from surprise to anger to something like fear. Jamie, Mom said quickly. Everyone, this is Alex Chun, Tom's business partner. Alex shook hands with everyone. Professional smile. Firm handshake. The kind of presence that commanded respect without demanding it. Mark watched him carefully, sizing him up. Business partner? Angela asked. What kind of business? Consulting, Alex said simply. We help companies optimize their operations. Sounds boring, Mark said. His first shot. Testing the waters. Actually, it's quite fascinating, Alex replied. We just landed a major contract with a real estate technology firm. Jamie's engineering background is invaluable for those kinds of projects. Mark's jaw tightened. Real estate. That's my field. So I've heard. Alex's smile was polite but cool. Tom mentioned you were in sales. I was, Mark said. Until recently. Oh, career change. Something like that. The room went quiet. Everyone could feel the undercurrent. The unspoken tension. Dad cleared his throat. Well, let's eat. Dinner's getting cold. We sat down at the familiar table. Same seats. Same dynamics. But something was different. Alex's presence had shifted the balance. Made Mark unsure of his usual performance. The conversation was stilted. Careful. Everyone walking on eggshells around the obvious subject. Mark couldn't help himself. It was like watching a moth fly into a flame. Halfway through dinner, he started his usual routine. You know, I'm glad I'm out of the corporate world, he said, cutting his turkey with aggressive precision. All that politics. All that backstabbing. I prefer honest work. Honest work is important, Alex agreed. That's why we're so careful about vetting our consultants. Vetting. Background checks. Reference calls. We had one candidate recently who fabricated most of his resume. Claimed sales figures that were completely false. Mark's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. That's unfortunate. It is. People think they can get away with lying in the digital age. But everything leaves a paper trail. Alex turned to me. Wasn't that the real estate candidate, Tom? The one who claimed the $5 million in revenue. The room went dead silent. Mark's face was drained of color. Mom looked confused. Dad suddenly found his mashed potatoes very interesting. Angela stared at her plate. I met Alex's eyes. He knew exactly what he was doing. Yes, I said quietly. That was him. Did you ever figure out his real sales numbers? About 400,000 over 3 years. And most of that was from one lucky deal. Mark's hands were shaking. I think I need some air. He stood up abruptly and walked outside. The back door slammed behind him. The silence stretched out like a held breath. Finally, Mom spoke. Jamie, what just happened? I folded my napkin carefully. The truth, Mom. That's what happened. I found Mark in the backyard, pacing back and forth across the frost-covered grass. His breath came out in white puffs. His hands were clenched into fists. You son of a bitch, he said without turning around. You planned this. You brought him here to humiliate me. I brought him here to meet my family. Bullshit. You wanted to embarrass me in front of everyone. I stepped closer. You've been embarrassing me for 30 years, Mark. Every holiday, every family gathering, every chance you got. That was different. How? How was it different? He spun around to face me. Because I was joking. Having fun. You did this to hurt me. I did this to show you what consequences look like. Consequences? He laughed bitterly. You destroyed my career over a grudge. I didn't destroy anything. You did that yourself when you lied. Everyone lies on resumes. Not everyone. Not like that. Not $5 million worth. He stared at me. Really looked at me. For the first time in years. You've changed. You used to be softer. I grew up. You grew cruel. No, I said. I grew tired. Tired of being your punching bag. Tired of being the family joke. Tired of listening to you mock something you never bothered to understand. Your degree built this. I gestured toward the house. My education. My knowledge. My boring, useless engineering degree built a company worth $20 million. The number hung in the air between us. Mark's eyes widened. 20 million? Alex and I started with nothing. Just two guys with good ideas and the skills to execute them. While you were making jokes, I was making a life. He sat down heavily on Mom's old garden bench. I didn't know. You never asked. We stood in silence for a long moment. The November wind rustled through the bare branches. Inside, I could hear the muffled sounds of family conversation. People trying to pretend everything was normal. I'm in trouble, Mark said finally. Real trouble. I know. My license is under review. Some complaints about misrepresentation. I might lose it. I heard. He looked up at me. You heard? How? People talk. It's a small industry. Did you know? I didn't report you. I didn't have to. He buried his face in his hands. My wife is talking about divorce. Says she can't trust me anymore. The kids are asking questions I can't answer. I'm sorry. Are you? Really? I considered the question. Yes. I'm sorry it came to this. I'm sorry you made the choices you made. I'm sorry our family is broken. Can you fix it? I can't fix anything, Mark. Only you can do that. How? How do I fix 30 years of? He stopped. Couldn't finish the sentence. Start by telling the truth. To yourself. To your family. To everyone you've lied to. And then what? Then you rebuild. From the ground up. The right way. He looked at me with something that might have been hope. Would you help me? I don't know. Maybe. I know I don't deserve it. No. You don't. But that's not the point. What is the point? The point is whether you're ready to change. Really change. Not just apologize and go back to the same behavior. He nodded slowly. I think I am. I think I have to be. Then we'll see. The next few weeks were quiet. Mark didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't show up at family functions. Mom said he was getting his affairs in order. Whatever that meant. I threw myself into work. New clients. New projects. The business was growing faster than we could hire people. We needed consultants. Experienced ones. People who understood sales and marketing and client relationships. People who could bridge the gap between our technical solutions and real-world applications. The irony wasn't lost on me. On a Tuesday in December, my phone rang. Mark's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer. Jamie. Hello, Mark. I wanted to call you. To apologize. Properly. I waited. I've been thinking about what you said. About telling the truth. About rebuilding. And I've been going to therapy. Trying to understand why I treated you the way I did. What did you learn? That I was scared. Scared that you were smarter than me. Scared that Mom and Dad loved you more. Scared that I wasn't good enough. So you made me feel like I wasn't good enough instead. Yeah, I did. And I'm sorry. The apologies sounded genuine. But apologies were just words. Actions mattered more. I'm putting together a recovery plan, he continued. Making amends to people I've hurt. Paying back money I owe. Trying to rebuild my reputation. That's good. I know I have no right to ask this, but I need work. Real work. Something legitimate. I'm listening. I was hoping, maybe, if you had anything entry level. Anything at all. I'll take whatever you can give me. Entry level. The golden boy asking for scraps. The humbling was complete. Let me think about it, I said. I'll call you back. I spent 3 days thinking about it. Discussing it with Alex. Weighing the risks and benefits. The pros and cons. The potential complications. But in the end, it came down to a simple question. Was I ready to forgive him? Not for his sake. For mine. Because carrying that anger was exhausting. Because revenge was a dish best served cold, but it was still just revenge. And revenge didn't build anything. It only tore things down. I called Mark on Friday. I have a position available. Junior consultant. $42,000 a year. 6-month probation. You'd be working under supervision. What kind of supervision? A recent graduate. Someone with the technical skills you lack. A kid. A very smart kid. With a degree in engineering. The pause stretched out. Then, when do I start? Monday. 9 a.m. Don't be late. I won't be. And Mark. Yeah. This is a real job. With real responsibilities. Real deadlines. Real consequences. If you screw this up, I can't help you. I understand. Do you? Really? Yes. I understand. Good. I'll see you on Monday. I hung up and stared out the window. $20 million. 20 employees. Clients in 12 states. All built on the foundation of that boring, useless engineering degree. But none of it felt as significant as the conversation I'd just had. Sometimes the biggest victories were the smallest ones. Mark showed up Monday morning at 8:45. Suit and tie. Polished shoes. Hair neatly combed. He looked like a man going to his first job interview. Which in a way he was. I introduced him to Jessica Park, our newest hire, 24 years old. MIT graduate. Brilliant analytical mind. She would be his supervisor for the probationary period. Mr. Whitman, she said, shaking his hand. I've reviewed your file. We'll start with basic project management protocols. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am. Mark calling someone 30 years younger, ma'am. The world really had turned upside down. I watched from my office as Jessica walked him through the systems. The databases. The reporting procedures. The client communication protocols. All the boring, technical stuff he'd spent years making fun of. He listened carefully. Asked questions. Took notes. No swagger. No charm. Just a middle-aged man trying to learn a new skill. It was humbling to watch. And strangely satisfying. Not because I enjoyed seeing him struggle, but because I could see him trying. Really trying. For the first time in his life, Mark was facing his limitations. And instead of making excuses, he was working to overcome them. That was progress. That was growth. That was the beginning of real change. The first month was rough. Mark made mistakes. Missed deadlines. Struggled with the technical aspects of the job. But he didn't quit. Didn't complain. Didn't blame anyone else. He just kept working. Kept learning. Kept trying to improve. Jessica gave him honest feedback. Sometimes harsh feedback. He took it without arguing. Without making excuses. Without trying to charm his way out of accountability. He's improving, she told me during a progress review. Slowly, but consistently. Is he worth keeping? Ask me in another month. By the second month, he was starting to find his rhythm. The sales background helped with client relationships. The charm worked when applied appropriately. The confidence was useful when properly directed. He was never going to be an engineer, but he was becoming a decent consultant. One evening, he knocked on my office door. Got a minute? Sure. He sat down across from my desk. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity. You're earning it. I know it wasn't easy. Bringing me in. Trusting me. It wasn't. I won't let you down. I know. He stood to leave, then paused. Jamie. Yeah. I'm proud of you. What you've built here. What you've accomplished. Thanks. I should have said that years ago. Yeah, you should have. He nodded and left. Such a small moment. But it felt like the first real conversation we'd had in decades. Christmas dinner was different that year. Quieter. More thoughtful. Mark didn't hold court. Didn't dominate the conversation. He listened more than he talked. Asked questions instead of making pronouncements. When someone asked about his job, he was honest. I'm learning a lot. It's challenging work. Tom's been very patient with me. No jokes about degrees. No comments about textbooks versus real-world experience. Just genuine gratitude for a second chance. After dinner, we stood in the kitchen washing dishes. The same routine we'd had as kids. Mark washing, me drying. Remember when we used to do this? He asked. Before everything got complicated? Before you decided I was the enemy. I never thought you were the enemy. What then? He considered the question. I thought you were the competition. For Mom and Dad's attention. For success. For everything. There was enough for both of us. I know that now. We finished the dishes in comfortable silence. When we were done, Mark turned to me. I've been thinking about what you said. About rebuilding. And I want to do it right this time. No shortcuts. No lies. No taking credit for other people's work. That's the only way it works. Will you help me? I already am. I mean long-term. As a partner. As a brother. I hung up the dish towel. We'll see how the next 5 months go. Fair enough. It was a start. Not a guarantee. Not a promise. But a possibility. And sometimes that's enough. Spring brought new challenges. New clients. New projects. Mark was handling more responsibility. Making fewer mistakes. Building genuine relationships with customers. Jessica recommended him for permanent status. He's found his niche, she said. Client relations. Problem solving. He's actually quite good at it. Good enough to keep. Good enough to promote. The promotion came in May. Senior consultant. Modest raise. Real responsibilities. Mark earned every bit of it. No family favoritism. No special treatment. Just merit-based advancement. The same system that had built the company from nothing. At the promotion ceremony, Mark gave a short speech. 6 months ago, I was a different person. I thought success meant taking shortcuts. Bending rules. Making myself look good at other people's expense. He paused. I learned that real success means adding value. Solving problems. Building something that lasts. He looked at me. I learned that from my brother. The one I spent 30 years underestimating. The applause was genuine. From colleagues who'd watched him struggle and grow. From Jessica, who'd seen him transform from a liability into an asset. From Alex, who'd given him a chance when he didn't deserve one. From me, who'd learned that forgiveness was sometimes the hardest and most necessary thing. After the ceremony, Mark found me in my office. I have something for you. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. I used to think you were beneath me. Now I realize I wasn't even looking. Thank you for showing me what I couldn't see. It was signed simply, your brother, Mark. The company Christmas party was in December. A celebration of another successful year. Record profits. New contracts. National recognition. Mark was there with his wife and kids. They'd worked things out. Rebuilt their marriage on honesty instead of lies. Found a way forward together. When it came time for toasts, Alex stood up first. To the power of good partnerships, he said. And second chances. Then Jessica. To the importance of mentorship. And patience. Then Mark. He looked nervous. Unsure. But determined. To my brother Tom, he said. Who taught me that the best revenge is living well. And the best victory is helping others succeed. He raised his glass. To the smartest man I know. And the best boss I've ever had. The room erupted in applause. People were wiping their eyes. Even the tough guys from accounting looked moved. I stood up slowly. To family, I said. And finding your way home. We clinked glasses. Brothers again. Not the same as before. Better. Built on truth instead of illusion. On respect instead of rivalry. On love instead of fear. It had taken 30 years, and a humbling so complete it nearly broke him. But sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. I'm writing this story 2 years later. The company is thriving. Mark is now a senior partner. He earned it. Every promotion. Every responsibility. Every bit of respect. No shortcuts. No family favors. Just consistent excellence and genuine growth. We have lunch every Tuesday. Talk about business. Family. The future. The past doesn't dominate our conversations anymore. We've made peace with it. Learned from it. Moved beyond it. People sometimes ask me why I hired him. Why I gave him a chance after everything he'd done. The answer is simple. Because I could. Because I had the power to choose.